Many of you may not realize this, but this is the last time that I will be mayor at this point in a meeting. Because don't go and clapping. You know, unless you're my wife, no clapping allowed, okay? Because next week we will have our reorganization, and we will have a new mayor and a new vice mayor. Okay, so as this is my last time, I am going to exercise what's known as the mayor's privilege to ramble about first, because normally as mayor I go last. So this time I'm going to start the chaos off by myself. The issues that are being brought before us are twofold, severalfold. On the agenda, it is the issue of our rent review board or review panel and general rent considerations. The issue of rent control, those two words, rent control, has so many different meanings and so many different applications. Many times you will see the reference that rent control in New York did not work. Rent control in Boston did not work. Well, the rent control there, the details are always very different. In government, details are important. We've also heard issues about, well, let the free market deal with it, as if there was a free market on both sides. There's no free market on either side. We have an unbelievable tax code which has plenty of incentives on investment side. In fact, this morning I was going over the new investment zones in Concord where you can take money from elsewhere, build in Concord, and get deferred your capital gains tax. So, you know, it's a complicated issue financially. There is no free market. It doesn't exist in housing. It may exist on the street in various other products, but it sure as hell doesn't exist on both sides here. Now, with that, I also would like to point out that from a cultural point, we have a significant difference in the concept of landlord. A landlord, we have a massive number of landlords who own 1, 2, 3, or small properties. They are significantly different in their relationship to the community and their relationship to their tenants than the landlord, which is actually land corporation, that owns 200, 300, 400 large spaces. In our city, we have like 400 people who own less than 4 units. The concept that rent control, that we would apply it to them, is very different. It's not something that I would do. 2 years ago, almost exactly to the day, I proposed a series of best practices. The best practices were actually lifted from the Apartment Owners Association, wherein they have subsequently disowned them. But the idea is to strike a balance between what we can do for tenants, what we can do for landlords, so that we can work. It should also be noted that when it comes to most of the issues of what we are going to be able to do on renting, we are restricted to those that happened before 1996. And there are some exceptions going afterwards, and we'll get to those. So the idea that we're going to affect new investments in brand new apartments, it's not going to happen. Now, I cannot see this council or our community wanting to mess up the small business. We are pro-small business. We understand that people buy 1 or 2 houses for their pensions. We're not going to mess that up. That's not our focus. We also recognize that for the most part, the overwhelming part, the small property owner who's renting Yes, they do it less than market, but they're also a major factor in helping the neighborhoods improve because they're the ones who are at the neighborhood. They're the ones who are looking after their property. They're the ones bringing their kid to pick up the dog poop, as someone testified. There are guys like John back there who helped clean up an actual street through his own labors, and he did an excellent job. And there are others that aren't here, that aren't named. So the focus, you have to remember the focus of some of the things which I'm now going to go on is for the single complexes, all right, that are maybe over 20 units, maybe over 28. And the idea is, and as a background, all right, 80%, 90% of the landlords in this city are all small. I think we have maybe 20 that own 60% of all the rental properties that would fall under Costa-Hawkins, which is 8,888 units, as it were 2 years ago. So these are some of the things that I would like to get on. Oh, I would also like to cover a few other issues. It was asked whether poor people should be allowed to live here. Everyone is allowed to live here. And in fact, when it comes to people below the average medium income, I happen to be one of them. I wouldn't even make 60% of the average medium income of this city. Maybe I would have made more if I didn't get into politics. Who knows? I would have definitely had an extra 35, 40 hours a week to work. So, yes, we need to have a diverse economic strata in the city. We are a community. Community is everyone. The name of our city, as I've said, is Concord. We live in concordance with one another. We were established 150 years ago by people who were refugees from a disaster in the total destruction of the town of Pacheco. And they built this place from scratch. So, these are the kind of things that I would like us to discuss or to focus on, simple things, all right? For example, there would be a limit of one raise of rent, and this is for, again, units of more than 20 to 28, okay? Would only be built before 1996, and a 10% max, unless then they can go, the landlord can go to the board to say, I would need to make more because I got to fix a roof or something. Now, all the local little guys that I've talked to, not a single one of them said they have ever raised their rent by 10%. But this gives some stability, all right? It will also avoid a lot of the problems that we've heard in the last 2 years. And I should point out, we've had these problems for 2 years. We've had a wave of people here. That's way before Prop 10. And all Prop 10 did was say that it's up to the local city to make the rules. And again, the whole idea, those two words, rent control, was, you know, an emotional issue. And just like the cannabis, 64. All right? 64 passed by 60%. You want to know how many people want a dispensary in this city, on this council? Oh, but they passed it by 60%. Anyway, other things we would like to do. We've talked about eviction and termination. When we have a lease that ends, under the current reality, it goes to this month to month and becomes not a lease but a rental agreement. When you have a lease, it defines what breaks the lease, when you can be evicted. You know, you bring in 5 dogs when you're only supposed to have 3, you know, no left-handed turtles, whatever it is, okay? I would like us to see that when a lease ends, that the terms of termination, an eviction, continue. All right, the rate ends, and you can have the negotiation, but at least have some, after all, you both sides sat down and wrote and signed that contract. And that defines what your eviction basis is. Seems reasonable to continue it. Next thing I'd like to see us talk about. There's going to come a time when you got to leave. Let's say that the rent goes up $42. All right, and you don't want to pay the $42. I know what that's like. I lived that for 18 years in New York. My dad refused to always pay the rent increase, which could be as low as $12 or $20 under rent control in New York, because he wasn't going to give a dime to the blood-sucking landlord. So we moved. But what we have here right now is 30 days if you live there under a year, or 60 days if you live there more than a year. I think it would be reasonable to allow for, yes, 60 days if you're up there 1 to 2 years, but then an extra month for every year that you've lived there, up to a point of 180 days. This gives, again, gives a little bit of cushion and honor to the people who have been with you for like 10 years. And then, for whatever reason, if it comes out to termination, gives them a little bit more flexibility to take the blow of moving. So that's, again, irrational. Again, this is for units, not for the small guy, but for the big guys. Next, I would like to see that in the event a landlord is in default of a code enforcement or a repair required by the city. And when you have to really push the city to get on default, right? Because you have to get like 3, 4 notices, and you're basically, waving your hands and saying, bye-bye, we don't want to do it. That you can't have an increase while you're in default with the city. All right? Not like, this is not earth-shattering science. All right? I would like that we have, at all times, when there's a new tenant coming in, that they are offered at least a 1-year lease if the tenant wants it. And when the lease expires, there should be a 1-year lease offered. All right? It could be at a higher rate. All right? The tenant doesn't have to. And if the landlord doesn't want to give it for whatever reason, he should explain it to someone. And that someone should be our rent board. Our rent board should not be non-binding. Someone said that we had a powerful rent board. No, we don't. All right? I want to show you power. I'll show you a bunch of guys down the block. They have badges and guns. That's power. All right? That's not what we have. All right? That's not what we have. All right? I would like to see when you sit down, to me, when there's arbitration, that means you're stuck with whatever this guy says. Now, you may want to have an appeal process or whatever. Just cause. Just cause is something which has been bantied about a lot. For the last month, I've sat down with a whole bunch of different people and asked them, what is just cause? In exact detail. I got copies of Richmond's concept of just cause. Someone sent me something from Santa Cruz. And I found that there is a great disparity of just cause. I would like us to figure out what works for Concord on the issue of just cause. All right? There has to be some rational stuff there. And we have to solve the problem of someone who buys a place and decides, oh, it's 2 bedrooms now. Well, I'm going to make it all 4 bedrooms. Well, it doesn't make sense that you're going to give the tenants that were there at 2 bedrooms and put them into 4 bedrooms. Likewise, I joked about it, but what about a guy who wants to buys an apartment and wants to make it a mausoleum for his cat? We got to figure these kind of things out. And it's a complex issue. And it's going to take us sitting down with a bunch of people to do this. And those people are mostly in this room and hiding behind the staff because they're pretty good at some of this stuff. I would also like to compliment the staff for an amazing set of reports. And not only did we have this one, but they put a collection together of everything that we did previously that's on the public record, and they put it all in one place for us so that make sure that we definitely don't get any sleep for the last week reading this stuff. Now, this is the kind of things that I would like to see in the discussion and going forward and in the resolutions. I mean, this is something that is substantial, all right? Now, admittedly, it's not going to solve all the problems, but it will impact about 2/3 of the buildings, of the dwelling units out there, and at the same time protect the little guys, all right, who are very terrified that when they see the word rent control, that all of a sudden we're going to tell them what they can do and what they can't do. Well, we do that in a certain degree, but we give you a great latitude. Now, again, most of what I just gave you is the best practices of the Apartment Owners Association as they presented it to here 2.5 years ago. So we have to have a balance, all right, a reasonable balance. We have to make sure that the small guys are protected, and we have to make sure that the large guys are restricted. There's a significant difference. The small guys who has one place out of 4 or 20, that's a significant impact. He's not going to go casually evict somebody. The big guys who have a 280, 300 units, well, they're not first. They're being run by a corporation, and they have a whole different concept and a whole different reserve. Now, we are not talking about, when we talk about housing, we're not talking about gasoline or chocolate or the price of this. Housing is very close to a totally different subject. Now, people have talked about housing as a right. Okay, we're not going to be there that yet. But housing is a necessity. Gasoline isn't. Chocolate isn't. And so, because we have necessities, we as a society have addressed and gotten involved collectively. And it's, democracy is a little, and republic, as for those who want it, is kind of messy at times. I believe that we exist right now at this point in our housing crisis, which we have officially declared, by the way, last week, that there is cause and there's justification for us to take some action. I would like us to, I've outlined some of the ideas, all right? Now, maybe it's not 28 units, maybe it's 31, maybe it's 20, who knows? I may not get 2 votes, I may not even get a second. But this is where I'm coming from as mayor. Protect the little guys, control or stabilize the bigger ones, prevent a disincentive to do things right. We still have a big incentive going forward to build new buildings, and we have affordable housing. And we try to remember that, families come first here. And that also means, the landlord's family and the family of the tenants. And we got to work together on this. And I think some of the stuff that I just outlined, and there may be some more brilliant ideas that have come forward. And that's what I want to throw out to my council. Now,